Hello and welcome to The Real Crush on the Comic Crush. The Real Crush is the pop culture film and TV show for the Comic Crush. This is where we deal with the non-comic book movies. This is part of our series of specials to sort of soft launch the new series, which is coming on later on in the year. So today we are going to be talking about Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. As before, I didn't want to do it alone. So I've brought someone in who isn't my dad, but it is in fact one of my favourite commentators on film and TV and pop culture, Mr. Keith Isles from Home Media Minefield.
I'm
how you doing,
glad
Keith?
you don't think I'm your dad. That's great, you know.
I don't know. I think we could pull it off.
Thanks. Wow.
Keith, come on. It's not a podcast if I can't wind you up a little bit. I am, of course, kidding. Keith remains ever youthful and actually looks younger than I do, which I promise I don't hate him for. So this is Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade.
Me back, anyway.
I've got to get back on track now. Come on.
Come on.
Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, as in the previous two specials where we did Raiders of the Lost Ark and Temple of Doom, we will each be picking a scene or sequence that we really love from this film. They may not be the major sequences, but they're ones that kind of speak to us and that we enjoy. We'll try and talk to you about little facts if we've got them from the movie and show you some of the images from those sequences. Keith is kicking us off today because his sequence occurs earlier in the film than mine does. What's your sequence, Keith?
Okay, well, the sequence on the home media release, is chapter 17, and it's called Austrian and German Goodbyes. And the scene runs from basically 56 minutes to 1 hour and 6 minutes. So it's a 10-minute sequence. It covers a couple of other chapters, To the Fireplace and the bike chase as well is all included in this portion. So so if any of you are gearing up either via streaming or physical media to check this out, as I said, on physical media it's chapter 17, at least it is on the versions I have, and it's the 56-minute mark and goes to about 1 hour 6 minutes, as I said. So fun sequence.
It is, just for clarity, it follows the scene where Indiana Jones and Elsa Schneider con their way into a German castle, or is it an Austrian castle? I believe it is an Austrian castle, right?
The tapestries.
Yes, the tapestries. And Indy is reunited with his father, and it's the first time we see Sean Connery in the picture. And we discover that their relationship is quite kind of acrimonious. It's got a lot of bristle.
Yeah, actually, this is post them reuniting scene, which again is a wonderful. I mean, again, when you ask me to pick a sequence, it's like with all these films, I find it really hard to choose because there's so many sequences that I like. So of course, this is the post where the junior, the whole breaking the heart and the head, that sequence. It's post that, and as I said, at this point they're captured. They're both tied to a chair, back to back. Elsa goes, to leave them, and she says, she whispers to Indiana, I can't forget how wonderful it was. And of course, because she's whispered it in his ear and they're back to back, Henry Jones Sr., his dad is like, oh, thank you. Yes, it was rather wonderful, and all this. And
I should point out at this juncture that I do have just off camera here a Sean Connery swear jar. So Keith owes me now £2 for every, it's £1 for every impression of Sean Connery that he slips in.
I'm so broke. I better start now. Stop now, should I say?
I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
Yeah.
Like, we'll do it on layaway, Keith.
Yeah, exactly. So there's that, and then obviously she kisses Indy and says the Austrian goodbye, and then the Nazi smacks him in the face and says the German goodbye, and they both agree that they preferred the Austrian one. But then what I think is so great here, the chemistry between these two guys playing father and son, with a very awkward relationship. And what I think is just so great is obviously, as Henry Jones Sr., Sean Connery is so removed from being the smooth James Bond character that it's unbelievable. And, Indy points out that they're tied to this chair, and he goes, you know what? I've got something in my pocket. And he reaches for it and goes, oh, it's a lighter, and it's my lucky charm. It's a Zippo lighter. And he goes, burn through the rope and we can get out of here. And of course, what does he do? He burns his hand and drops it. And the room is obviously back in the days in the late 1930s, when I guess all furniture was highly flammable. the place basically catches on fire. And what I love about the whole sequence is, again, an absolute masterclass from Spielberg in terms of how it's shot, but also the scripting and the timing and the chemistry between Harrison Ford and Sean Connery in this scene. It's so good because it's tense and action-packed, but it's also light-hearted and fun. And it's really well choreographed. I think it's great. We see Donovan. There's a brief scene where we see Donovan leaving the castle, and they get word that Marcus Brody has been caught, and he has the journal, the map, should I say? And basically, they use that classic line, Germany has just declared war on the Jones boys, which again, I love that line.
It's one of my favorites. In rewatching, I really kind of really like
that. They shimmy into the fireplace, because by this point the entire room is on fire
except the fire, which I love. It's a great bit of physical.
Yeah, the wonderful irony. So they get into this old stone fireplace, and they to be protected from the fire, but B, there's a like a poker set at the side, and Indy thinks he might be able to cut through the ropes with it, but of course it actually is a latch to a secret doorway, and the fireplace revolves, and it revolves right into the Nazi radio control room, in the building. And of course they're then faced with soldiers and who start shooting at them, so they have to keep reversing round. And it's as I said, the dialogue is brilliant. Henry Jones keeps saying that things are intolerable, which is kind of his line through this whole thing. And just the action is really good and really well thought out. And it's that perfect thing of mixing comedy and action, but without it being slapstick. It's just humorous, well-timed action piece, which is fantastic. That then leads to them trying to escape. They find a secret spiral staircase, which Henry Sr. finds by sitting on a chair to think about things and triggering the switch. And Indiana actually falls down the spiral staircase. So again, they're working like a wonderful team right from the get-go. And they set some boats off to make it look like they're leaving by river, but he jumps on a motorcycle sidecar and escapes that way. And it leads into, I think, a very enjoyable, it's not quite to the level of the truck chase in Indiana, in Raiders of the Lost Ark, sorry. It's not quite up to that level, but there is a motorcycle chase that takes place, and again, it's just a lot of fun, and we see their relationship sort of start to develop once they get to the end of that, and they have the conversation about having to go and get the journal because it's got all of the notes in about finding the Grail, and the fact that he wrote them down so he wouldn't have to remember them. Notice I've stopped doing the accent. I'm just doing the line. And they have that sort of touching moment where he says about not understanding his obsession, and neither did Mum. And I just think that whole little sequence there, again, it leads into more great sequences, but I just, when you said pick one sequence, I just thought I find that sequence a lot of fun because there's a lot of action in it, there's a lot of humor, it features, everything from fire, pyrotechnics to practical motorcycle chases, and ends with a little bit of an emotional beat. So I just think that sequence was a lot of fun. So that was why I picked that one.
And screenwriting wise, I mean, it's a 3-act sequence, which I quite like. A 3-act sequence within the larger 3 acts of the movie, and actually takes us into kind of the second act of the film.
Yes.
Anyway, really,
that's right. It finishes on the sign that says Berlin, and then it cuts into that. So yeah, it's really well done. I like that piece.
Yeah, and I like sometimes when you can see the mechanics of the screenplay at work.
Yes,
I think there's something about that I quite like. I don't know if it's because I've always tried to write those sort of things myself, and I admire that kind of writing. Also, that bike sequence is fascinating because there's actually a moment in it where Indy becomes a knight. He jousts another,
and then uses that piece of broken barrier to again. I love the way Spielberg shoots that. So you get the final bike still to go. There's a little bit of a silly bit where he wheelies and puts the wheel on the back of the sidecar that Henry Jones is in, which is a bit silly. But then there's a great shot where he comes up alongside, about to draw his weapon and whatever, comes up alongside, and Indy looks, and we get I like the angle Spielberg used. Again, it feels kind of Hitchcockian almost, but we're looking through the spokes of the wheel up at Indy, and he comes up with the idea and slams it in, and the guy goes straight over the forks and whatever. Amazing. I love, again, great action sequence, but some good character stuff going on there. You get Henry Jones Sr. looking at his watch, and Indiana's looking kind of pleased at himself, but then he looks and he's kind of a little bit embarrassed of what he's done in front of his dad, and yeah, I just think, and again, I mean, about this film, we talked, obviously the last one was Temple of Doom, and some of my comments on that was that they did something very different to the setting and completely different characters and whatever than they did with Raiders of the Lost Ark. But then when we get back to this, we're sort of back to the familiar again, because it's 1938. It features Nazis. You've got Salah, and you've got Marcus Brody, back as part of the ensemble and whatever for this film. So it brings it. I always felt that this one was a little bit more akin as a sequel to Raiders of the Lost Ark. And as we said, Temple of Doom was technically a prequel anyway, right?
Yeah, so, I mean, completely. Yeah. It's interesting that every other film has well, until Dial of Destiny, because I assume that the object they're searching for, Dial of Destiny, is not going to be necessarily based in fact. Every other film has a sort of Judeo-Christian artifact at its center.
Right, yes.
The first is the Ark of the Covenant, the third is the Holy Grail.
Holy Grail.
Whereas the even numbered films, if you like, from the quartet so far, quintet, have more exotic objects that are outside of that. I think the Sankara stones were real things. I believe they did actually exist. I can't remember from like some research I did years ago. Apparently they were a real thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think Lucas, being a bit of a historian, tries to always like put something, you know, factual in with his mythical, if that makes sense, you know.
Sure. And it does make me wonder what the next one will be like without the hand of Lucas in. You know what I mean?
Well, they should have called it the Wheel of Fortune and Glory. But there was a lot of controversy about the actual title, wasn't there? But yeah,
as there always is. I mean, you know, the number of sort of script changes. I think this was always going to be what it was in terms of you know, meeting Indiana Jones's father.
Yeah, and again, what a genius move! What a genius move! I think we talked about it last time about the fact that the whole concept of Indiana Jones was born from James Bond, and what better person could they have got even though there wasn't really a big enough age gap between Harrison.
It's only about 10 years or something.
Connery, yeah. But you know, they pulled it off, you know, the way they made him up and dressed him and stuff, and what an absolute perfect father to a character called Indiana Jones. Yeah, I mean,
completely.
It all makes sense and it really works. And I just loved that they did this with this film. I just thought it was perfect. And you know, this film as well being unique in the fact that we don't only get to meet Indiana Jones's father, but we get to see, you know, Indiana Jones as a teenager as well. And learn about, you know, the one criticism about all of that, fun as it is, it's like everything behind Indiana Jones as a character happened in one morning.
Yeah.
But
all the accoutrements come into play. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very, and also it's weird because you talk about archaeology as a form of thievery or grave robbing, and he literally steals everything that he will later on go on to form the archaeologist Indiana Jones. You know,
that's very true. Yeah.
Yeah, you know, the hat he takes from someone else, the whip he sort of purloins on the way.
They even bring Harrison Ford's real life scar into the mythology.
Yeah,
which I thought was
I like that.
Really
I like that. And it was interesting at the time to see an actor who was so up and coming and sort of on his way to being quite huge. You know, River Phoenix do that role. I mean, you know, you have to remember how brief River Phoenix's career sadly was. But he did notable films as he went along.
Yeah, agreed.
And it was only a few years before he sadly passed away. I mean, he was due to do Interview with the Vampire, I believe, in a few years after this, which of course, never came to pass. But yeah, overall, I really liked that the castle sequence, and the ensuing motorbike chase. I think the motorbike chase is better than what kind of went before it. Or just before it. I quite like the Venice stuff. That's a lot of fun.
Chase. Yeah. Speedboat chase.
But yeah, I think the kind of motorbike chase was the kind of zenith up to then for me of the action.
Yeah. That's kind of why I picked it, to be honest.
Yeah.
I was like, what, you know, again, everybody always talks about the opening to this film for obvious reasons, and you know, we talked a little bit last time about the fact that whole opening sequence as well was kind of the basis for the Young Indiana Jones Chronicles that followed a few years later. You know, but
Well,
yeah, it was.
I've got to say I've been quite pleased with our originality so far, Keith, because we've managed to avoid the opening sequences. Oh no, we haven't. Sorry, we did the opening for the last one, didn't we?
Well, and the reason my sort of justification for that was just because that one scene is so different to anything else we get across the franchise. You know, right down to his the character's costume in inverted commas is different. You know, so
and connects to this film in an oblique way. You know,
exactly
with the James Bond stuff as you brought up last time. So,
well, you know, if there's a James Bond connection, I've got to go on about it, haven't I? You know me well enough for that, right?
What's also interesting about this scene for me is it contains some of the best music in the film, and in fact, in terms of sort of hummability and fun to listen to, Last Crusade is my favorite of the scores.
Okay.
You know, Raiders is a great score and contains some great themes. I think it always points out, it kind of almost points out though that John Williams often the strongest music, despite the kind of indelibility of all the themes he's written, Star Wars, Harry Potter, this, just to name a few. I think his best music is the non-theme stuff. So I mean, I think for Raiders, the Ark theme and the Well of Souls are,
which makes a cameo music appearance in this film as well.
Indeed.
Which I like.
And I think for this the Scherzo, I believe it's called Scherzo for motorcycles, or Scherzo, I don't know quite how to pronounce it. Is a really nice, lively, jaunty, fun piece. And later on, we get the music for the tanks, for the sort of desert sequence there, and that is a superb bit of scoring. As always, one of the great kind of masters of film music.
Yeah.
For me, I've kind of gone with a scene that actually follows this one almost, not, you know, quite hard on the heels, but not. There's one scene in between, and it's the sort of Berlin escape scene on the Zeppelin, and the plane chase afterwards. Now, this has some great fun in it when they're on the Zeppelin, and Indiana Jones is already kind of celebrating. You know, they've gotten away with it, and Henry reminds him, you know, maybe don't celebrate just yet because you know we're still in Berlin. And we get that wonderful no ticket scene, which again is a lot of fun, with the German officer who is looking for Henry and Indiana, and then of course is sort of punched out by Indy, who kind of gestures to everyone, you know, no ticket, and you see that great show of hands lifting up their tickets. So it's again, you know, the nice comedy beats are all there. But then what follows is this kind of really touching scene between the two of them, where they discuss their relationship briefly, and you know,
very well written. It's a very well written scene.
A superbly well written scene. I suspect this might have been one of the scenes where, because didn't they have is it Clement and Lefrenay? I can't remember the name of the two writers. They were sort of British television writers, and they kind of were Sean Connery's pet writers, if you like. They would come along and often rewrite his scripts. Dick Francis, and I think it's Dick Francis and Ian Lefrenay. I can't remember their names now, or Dick Clement and Ian Lefrenay. But they were quite famous as sort of British television writers, and they created quite a few shows. I think they might have even created Dad's Army. And he would often have them come on and do a rewrite of his stuff. And I think Tom Stoppard might have even had a pop at this as well. So it may have come from him, the sort of more eloquent, more novelistic, almost playwright-y kind of stuff that's in the film. And I think that their relationship is very nicely portrayed here.
Mm-hmm.
Where from Henry's perspective, he says to Indiana, you left just as you were becoming interesting.
Yeah.
And I really like that. But of course, from Indy's perspective, he'd endured years of being kind of isolated by this man.
Yes.
While he ran around looking for the Grail and kind of, even isolated their mother, who's obviously died from an illness many years before.
Mm-hmm.
And there's some lovely underpinnings. I mean, the first moment where he says to him, you remember the last time we had a quiet drink? I had a milkshake.
Yeah.
And it's sort of, well, what did we talk about? And he's like, well, we never talked. And I love all that stuff. It's great. It's the kind of stuff I really thrill to in screenwriting.
Yeah,
which are these beautiful little exchanges that tell you a lot.
Again, it's a nice emotional beat following, the action that we've just had, and also the humor, because, like you said, the bit when he throws Vogel out of the the airship. That is again the comic timing there. No ticket and whatever was perfect. But then this is so layered. We then get this wonderful scene, and when you think about it, that brief exchange between them tells us everything we need to know about about what happened, and the fact that he's went off for 20 years to do these adventures and all of this sort of thing, and it's just so nicely done, so nicely performed.
And also the way the environment and the setting and the lighting is used to lead you into the next action sequence, where you see the light casting a shadow on the glasses of whiskey, and that light begins to move, and Indiana realizes we're turning around, we're going back to Berlin, because Vogel has obviously then managed to get the airship turned around. I've got a kind of a thing about airships. I love seeing them. I think it's always exciting when you see one, and I think it's kind of a shame we don't. I mean, I know obviously they're probably because of safety issues now.
But there's that alternative universe, right, where they're still being used everywhere. As in Batman,
you always know
series.
You always know you're watching some sort of alternate universe show or film, isn't it? There's along comes an airship.
Exactly.
And there was apparently a very interesting sort of deleted scene here featuring more German officers that I've only ever seen photographs of, where they have an encounter and then they, between the levels, because when we next see them, they're coming down through the structure of the airship, and they steal the biplane that's attached. I don't know if there were actually biplanes attached to airships back in that period. I'm sure they were. I'm sure it was very well researched.
Yeah. I don't know. It was handy that there was, though, right?
Yeah. Sorry, I've gone mad with the photos there, but it's great that there is, and they come down, and then they're pursued by two German fighters. This actually for me provides so much of the fun of the film, because you have Indiana explaining, right, 11 o'clock. Henry's in the gun seat. He's looking at his watch again. What happens at 11 o'clock?
At 11, yeah.
And he explains to him, 12, 11, 10. But then Henry proceeds to fire at the German plane as it comes behind them and shoots out for the second time, he drops them further in the shit than they were when they started.
Oh, yeah, I mean, this parallels the scene I picked,
Yeah.
basically, doesn't it? You know, first with a Zippo lighter, and now with airplane mounted machine guns.
Well, I love the fact that his reaction is just not to tell him.
Yes.
He just says, "Oh, I'm sorry, they got us." Like I love that. I think it's beautifully played by Connery, who is a lot better actor, I find, than I think people give him credit for.
Oh,
because
sure.
he plays that moment very nicely.
Yeah,
it's an interesting contrast of styles, actually, because I think Connery underplays a lot as an actor, whereas Harrison Ford, in looking at these films, I've noticed he really overplays. But I think the reason he does it is because it really sells all the action, like his facial expressions, body movements. He's really kind of overplaying, and I don't think that you would necessarily get an actor doing that today.
No, I mean, it's certainly fair to say that he is more animated as Indiana Jones than he is as Harrison Ford. even back then, you know, back then. And yeah, I mean, well, you know, he's always been one of my my heroes from childhood, you know, as an actor. I think he's done some fantastic stuff over the years. But yeah, both him and Sean, you know, are right up there for me. And it was so good to see them and their different styles, which I agree with you. I think they do have a different style of acting, but it works just so wonderfully in this. Yeah. I know I'm going to rush galore. I am glad. Oh, sorry. Are you going to go into the next part of the scene, or is
yes, because we could do it. You carry on with your point though, because I want to hear it.
I was just going to say that when you told me you were picking this scene, I was kind of pleased, because this is a scene that I did also sort of want to talk about as well, and I'm like, this is great, because I love this scene, and the humor, the writing, and all that stuff is brilliant. And I love these films and the way they're made. But something that's always kind of bothered me about this scene in particular, out of the original 3 Indiana Jones films,
right?
And it's always been this scene, is obviously this used a mixture of you know, real aerial photography, location aerial photography, and optical composites, as well as obviously a set and whatever, that the mock-up cockpit that that Connery and Ford are in. Yeah. But it always for me, well, right from when Vogel lands in the pile of suitcases after he's thrown, the pile of luggage after he's thrown out of the airship, right the way through this sequence, I always found the composite not quite right. I don't know what it was. It always had that, you could tell it was a blue screen or green screen, you know, matte shop composite type thing, because and the other thing it created, obviously with a completely understandable reason, but it created a bit of a continuity error as well, because obviously on the set that they're filming on, the fuselage set, you know, as he revolves, he blasts the entire rudder, the rear rudder of the plane, off completely, right? But when they then cut to the real aerial photography, you can kind of see that there's just like a hole in the rudder, and the top of it's still, yeah, obviously intact, because it would have to be, the plane wouldn't be able to fly.
It is the type of thing only you would notice.
It's always been one of those things. And again, some of the miniature shots as well, which are incredibly well done, but again, I find some of the compositing, and I'm being very nitpicky here, by the way, but I find, you know, this is obviously before, long before CGI. You know, this was all optical, as I said, miniatures and composites and stuff like that were done to create this. But this film, more than the other two, for me, even though it was made later than the other two, felt like a little bit of a step backwards with its visual effects.
Yeah, I don't know if it is partially an effect of the film stock getting better and therefore perhaps not being lit correctly in terms of the photographing of the multiple elements. And I hope it's not insulting the many people that worked on it. To say
no,
that.
And by the way, I love these. I mean, Light and Magic, the documentary about industrial light and magic and everything. What these guys did back then was, there was no doubt about it, it was an art form that I think I mentioned to you, I saw Fast X last night. I don't want to take us off track here, but I saw that, and you can tell watching that, although there's obviously a lot of location and stunt work done in those films, you can tell that a huge amount of it, probably more than 50% of it, is CG. Is done in the computer, and
as is fairly standard now.
Sorry.
As is fairly standard now.
Yes, yeah. Unless it's a Mission Impossible film or something. But yeah, but yeah. So I'm not knocking the aerial work, the stunt work, or definitely the visual effects work by saying this. It's just something I've always noticed and has always bothered me a little bit about that sequence. Fun as it is,
I've always found the composites in the Indiana Jones films not great, to be honest with you. There's some that are really nice, but increasingly as I go on and watch them again, you can really begin to see, because they're sneaking a lot that you don't realise are actually visual effect shots.
Well, that, which is the best type of visual effects, when you don't know it's there. Obviously that's a part of the craft as well. But yeah, I don't know. There was just always bits in that sequence that did bother me, even though it doesn't matter, because the actual story and what's going on is so enjoyable that it's not like, when I say it pulls me out, not necessarily in a, I mean, it sounds like I'm slagging it off, and I don't want it to sound like that, because I love this film, but it was just something when you pick that sequence, and I rewatched it all for this, which again, love these films, but when I was watching it, I was like, oh yeah, that's something that always kind of bugged me. It was the slight sort of how that looked, and also obviously the slight continuity with the whole rudder and stuff at the back of the plane. But I'm not belittling it. Please,
no, not at all. There are some things that look a bit ropey in it. However, I mean, you move on to this great thing where they steal the little car.
Again, brilliantly directed.
Brilliantly directed.
You see the guy just finishing changing his wheel, and he's about to put the wheel cap on, and it pulls away. And again, I just love shots like that. And well done.
It does show one of the sort of Spielbergian traits, I find, which is starting with the close up and moving out to the wider shot, and giving you a lot more story information that way. And of course, the plane follows the car into the tunnel, but unfortunately, loses its wings on the way and overtakes the car in a great moment, which I absolutely love. But
a little comedic, another little comedic beat in there. But and then of course the great, well, at least that's the worst of it.
Before the other plane drops a bomb on them, and they fall into their thing. But for me, this is where the really great stuff occurs.
Yes.
This is my favorite stuff in the film.
Yeah.
Or in the especially within this sequence, because they're trapped on a beach with nowhere really to hide. The plane's coming down towards them. And Henry Jones removes his umbrella from his satchel.
This is after Indy has discovered that his revolver is empty.
Yeah, is empty.
Right?
Yeah. And creates a kind of a ruckus that sends the seagulls on the beach up towards the plane and creates a bird strike, bringing the plane down. What I love about this is that there's the wonderful line from Connery, you know, I remembered my Charlemagne, let my armies be the rocks and the birds in the sky, which I always found very beautiful and very poetic. Not read Charlemagne, so I can't really speak to it that much, but that line has always stuck with me. But also there's a moment he walks by camera and Spielberg chooses to focus on Harrison Ford,
Yes.
who suddenly has this moment of realization about his father and this moment of love and awe, really.
Yes.
About that man, which is the way I think all children feel about their parents at some stage or another. There's always, especially, but it usually occurs when you're very small.
Yes.
And I think this is him reconnecting with that. And
Yes.
it's just a beautiful moment.
It is.
And it's a great way to end the scene. And I absolutely love it.
And no seagulls were harmed in the making of this film.
No.
Yes.
All fake. But it is one of my favorite moments, not only in the film, but probably the entire quartet of films.
Yeah. No, it is a lovely.
I absolutely love
agree.
it.
I agree. It is a lovely moment, and it's nicely shot. And again, not quite as profound as that line, but when we talk about cool lines from the film, you know, you get that one just before he does that, when he says, you know, I'm not used to being shot at, and Indy says, you know, happens to me all the time. You know?
Yeah, I love it. It's great. It's absolutely great. Or what's it? I think it's those people are trying to kill us.
Yes.
I know. It's a new experience for me. I think it's just a lovely kind of play on, you know, with the dialogue in those films, and genuinely enjoyable. So we're almost at the end, Keith, because we've got one more movie to go after this, the contentious one.
Yeah, I've still got to pick my scene for that. I'm not. The thing is, these first three films I'm so familiar with. You know, I've watched them dozens of times. You know, on the big screen, on home video, on DVD, now on 4K and Blu-ray. And by the way, you know, I got to say, I watched the release, the 4K, which also has the Blu-ray steelbook release here. Right. But what I love as well that they've done with all these is you've got this wonderful Drew Struzan artwork. But you know that each film had sort of essentially two posters. There was only two posters. Well, what you get in each case is you also get the second poster. As nice mini poster as well. You know, the man with the hat is back and he's bringing his dad. I love that.
And did you unbox this one as well on your channel?
Yes, on my channel I've got basically three separate videos showing the unboxing of each. I didn't get, this won't surprise you, but I didn't get the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull.
If I can just say briefly about the full film, I mean, you're yet to kind of rewatch, but I recently had a rewatch of it. I
have it on Blu-ray and my original Indiana Jones Adventures Blu-ray set, which I talk about on the thing as well. But
I didn't have the adverse reaction that everyone seemed to have to that film when it first came out, and my enjoyment of it has deepened since then. So I think it will be an interesting show with a diversity of opinion there. So I'm looking forward to doing it.
We'll see. We'll get to that one. There is, like I said, with all of these, there is a story behind it. So we'll talk about that when we get there, I guess. And then, of course, obviously, I'm trying to avoid whatever I can about Dial of Destiny because I don't want to be influenced by anything. I just want to go and see it. I will say for the record that I've been a fan of James Mangold for years, 20 years or however long he's been making films. I love his work, and I have faith in him as a filmmaker, director, whatever. That I do have faith in, but to say I've got my concerns, yeah, I do. But
okay,
I want to go into it open.
Right. Well, we'll hopefully get to. The plan is we will finish Kingdom of the Crystal Skull next week.
Yeah.
So you should be watching it roughly a week after this, hopefully, and then we're going to move straight on to Dial of Destiny. And we'll do a review for that. And Keith, I do want to take an opportunity again to thank you for sticking with me and doing these.
Yeah, this has been a lot of fun.
Course.
Seriously, thank you so much for involving me in this. This has been a lot of fun. These films are very special to me, particularly Raiders, as we've gone into on a previous episode. So check that out. But yeah, I love these, especially these first three. Really formative time for me with movies and filmmaking and everything. And again, like I want to double say here that I was not knocking the filmmaking by my minor criticisms there, but yeah, love this. Love the way this film ended as well. I know that's not what we're talking about, but I just think fine. that again, incredibly moving, brings me to tears actually at the end. And I like the last joke sting before the end about naming the dog Indiana and all of that, and then literally them all riding off into the sunset. I always thought that was such a good ending to this film.
Indeed. Yeah, I agree. I absolutely agree. It's a lovely moment and a terrific movie. So you'll be able to find Keith's channel, Home Media Minefield, in the links below. It's worth checking out if you like Blu-ray, DVD, 4K. Keith does unboxings and product reviews. Also, as part of his Let's See What's Out There podcast, which initially started out as a purely Star Trek podcast, but has now expanded into even more areas of pop culture. Keith does some great live streams with various kind of collaborators, and they're always fun to watch, always informative. They're great long form watches because these guys really do deep dives into the shows and films that they talk about, and they've handled some great stuff. You can also catch Keith on the Movie Heaven, Movie Hell podcast, which now sadly does not, it's not being made anymore, but you've got hundreds of episodes online, I believe.
There's a wealth of
I appeared on 2 or 3 of those, and I always enjoyed it. It was always great hanging out with you guys and being on that show.
Yeah,
it's a great fun show, worth checking out.
And I would like to also plug, I do have another channel, another YouTube channel, which is called British Isles, which is EYLES, as in my last name. Not many people have subscribed or go to that channel, but it does have short films that I've made over the years. There's a half a dozen short films on there, written, produced, directed by me. I'm in one of them as well, made with zero budget practically, but I any views or feedback or anything on that, I'd love to hear and hope to be encouraged to make more films in the future. But I keep working on things, and then things keep happening which prevents them from moving forward. But film and TV, if you haven't already gathered by this, really is my passion. So whether it's talking about it, making it, being in it, whatever, so yes.
And definitely worth checking out because they're great fun, those films, and it's very interesting to see Keith sort of evolving as an actor and as a filmmaker. And I first met Keith as an actor, as it were. So you really should take a look at those. It is a great channel to subscribe to. So please do that. Loads of links in the bottom. We'll be back with more very soon for Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, and then we hope Dial of Destiny. Also, we've got some more stuff planned. We're planning to do another series of films So I won't say what until we can definitely kind of get the dates down and how we're going to do it. But that will be over on Keith's channel, Home Media Minefield. I think it's nice for us to alternate. It's just that it happens that this series of films, Indiana Jones, lent itself more to comics than the other series of films that we're going to do.
Yeah. Well, there have been comics of Indiana Jones, hasn't there?
Yeah, there have indeed, and there were some terrific ones. But trying to get hold of them now is practically impossible.
Yeah. I still remember as a kid, I had the Marvel adaptation of Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Right.
It was I don't know whether I've still got it in storage at my mum and dad's or something somewhere, but yeah, I used to read it cover to cover. Some odd colouring on it though, if I remember right, but it was very good. So yeah.
Which is an adaptation I've never read. I don't think I've ever seen it. I've seen some of the other later stuff where they did Indiana Jones and his own adventures in the sort of Return of the Jedi British sort of A4 size magazine.
That's right. Yeah.
You used to be able to get certainly some memorable ones there. You can follow me at the Comic Crush just there on Twitter and Instagram. You can find the Comic Crush website out there on the internet, and I hope you'll visit that. So we do comics and film. I do hope you'll check it out. We've got some more great interviews and things coming, and certainly there's plenty of back material, and I'm putting even more of the older stuff online now very gradually. But there's a ton of reviews there. I do essays, comic reviews, all that kind of stuff at the Comic Crush, thecomiccrush.com online, and then you can find us on Facebook, just the Comic Crush channel. Keith, I want to thank you so much for doing this again.
Thanks,
I'm
Paul.
really looking forward to doing Crystal
it.
Skull with you, even though I suspect there'll be a strongly worded debate or two.
Who knows? All right.
Sorry?
I said no. All right, that's cool.
Yeah. I'm actually really interested because it's not a film we've actually. I think in all the times we kind of met up and hung out, we've never really talked about this film. So I'm really interested to hear.
That says a lot there, doesn't it?
and I'll be interested to see, because you've only watched it once or twice before. Am I right?
Yeah, I obviously I saw it when it first opened.
Right.
I think I saw it a couple of times because I remember taking my dad to see it, because my dad's always enjoyed the Indiana Jones film. So I remember taking him to see it, and I probably watched it when I first got it on home media a few years back. But it has been some years since I've sat down and watched it, so I am going to rewatch it for this this podcast, and so I can pick the scene.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really interested to see what you have to say about it. Like, I genuinely like watching it again, and I hope that what you'll do is you'll try and go in.
I'm going to go in with an open mind.
Yeah.
No, I will.
But yeah, not that I want us to agree on the film necessarily, but just I would like to hear your opinion. Now, sort of a few years on from.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
So I look forward to that. Keith, thanks very much for your time.
No
you've been a great co-host as always. Goodbye, guys. Thank you for tuning in. Remember to hit the links down there for the web shop and the Patreon. Those all help me keep going. I really do need that help, and I really appreciate you guys perhaps giving that stuff a look. Thanks, and we'll catch you next time on The Crush. Goodbye.
Bye.